We recently discussed the worst AEW signings ever, so it's only fair we did a video also discussing the worst WWE signings. And WWE sign many wrestlers every year, and not all of them work out, and a couple of them in recent history may be considered some of WWE's worst ever wrestlers and biggest busts. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the worst WWE signings ever. The signing of Cain Velasquez to WWE was doomed from the start, and that's thanks in part to the fact they debuted him in the worst way possible. But before we get there, for those who don't know, Cain Velasquez is a former UFC fighter, and he was a very successful one at that. Cain Velasquez was a former UFC heavyweight champion, having famously beat Brock Lesnar to win the belt. He'd finished his UFC career in 2019 by getting KO'd by Francis Ngannou in 26 seconds, and finished his career with a record of 14 wins and 4 losses. And just 1 month after his last UFC fight, he would sign a multi-match agreement with the Mexican wrestling promotion AAA, and looking to get involved with wrestling. He made his pro wrestling debut at that year's Triple Mania event, teaming with Cody Rhodes and Psycho Clown to defeat Killer Kross and Los Mercenarios. And I'll tell you what, it was actually decent and a really solid debut for Cain Velasquez, as his team picked up the win in his first match. He would have another match for the promotion the next month, picking up a win again, and reports started to come out that he may be on WWE's radar. And sure enough, we fast forward to the debut episode of SmackDown on Fox on October 4th, 2019, where we saw Brock Lesnar squash Kofi Kingston for his WWE title in 6 seconds, and then get confronted by his former UFC rival, Cain Velasquez. And while I'm a pretty big UFC fan myself personally, and as cool as I genuinely thought it was to see these two's UFC feud cross over into the WWE, kind of the first time we've ever seen that, man was this dreadful. It was the worst way to debut Cain Velasquez, because Kofi Kingston, a fan favourite, had just been done a major disservice and just been squashed for this moment. And the moment is even worse in hindsight because of what happened next. Of course, this would lead to Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar having a match for the WWE title in Saudi Arabia at the end of that same month. And what a bust this match was. It started off with the two brawling, exchanging blows and strikes like it was an MMA fight, which was cool to see for the first 30 seconds, but then Brock just locked in the Kimura lock and tapped out Cain Velasquez for a total of 2 minutes in this match. Just a pointless match. Lesnar attacked Velasquez after the match, and Velasquez wasn't seen on TV after this. He was actually set to be in the 2020 Royal Rumble match, but injuries would cancel these plans. And when the pandemic came round months later and the first budget cut firings were announced, Cain Velasquez was on that list and was released from the WWE just like that, rendering the entire thing pointless and meaning Kofi Kingston got buried for nothing. Eva Marie was signed to the WWE in 2013 for one reason and one reason only: Total Divas. Total Divas was the new reality show that WWE were a part of, where it would follow and document the lives and drama of WWE divas behind the scenes. And Eva Marie was signed to the WWE purely to be a part of Total Divas. In fact, despite having a performance center opening very soon, Eva Marie was shot up to the main roster immediately with only 2 weeks of training. And when you watched her matches, it very much showed. Eva Marie quickly became known as possibly one of the worst WWE wrestlers of all time, and would botch in nearly every match she had, and she had no business being in the ring at all. And after her first year of wrestling and some of the worst wrestling you've probably ever seen, Eva Marie would take a hiatus due to injury, and during this hiatus would get extra training from Brian Kendrick, and when she returned in 2015, it was in NXT. And early on in her NXT run, she showed a lot of improvements and looked a different wrestler, and even the crowd were on her side. Well, that was until she went back to her old ways and forgot to kick out in a match against Billie Kay, which caused the NXT crowd to turn on her. But despite this, her NXT run wasn't too bad. She mixed it up against some big names and was one of the top heel women by the end of her NXT run, before she was called up to the main roster again. And after she was drafted to SmackDown in the 2016 draft, she would debut a new character which would see her avoiding wrestling in any way possible, with an over over-the-top announcer for all of her entrances. It was actually quite entertaining, and it also meant that we didn't have to see her wrestle, so win-win. However, Eva Marie would disappear from TV after she was suspended for 30 days due to wellness violation, but despite this suspension being only for 30 days, Eva Marie wouldn't appear again on SmackDown or for the WWE, and after she was inactive for over a year, she was released from the company in August of 2017. And just like that, the Eva Marie WWE experiment was over. Until she returned in 2021 for absolutely no reason. She returned in June of 2021, now aligned with Doudrop, aka Piper Niven. What a stupid ring name that was, Doudrop. What? This was a rough time for the Raw Women's division, as you had top workers like Asuka and Naomi losing to Eva Marie and Doudrop. We also had to endure the Eva Marie versus Alexa Bliss singles match at SummerSlam that year and their feud that came with it, because yes, they did have Eva Marie versus Alexa Bliss on the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. The match was awful and saw Eva Marie be defeated before Doudrop turned on her, and she'd have a couple more matches losing to Doudrop on TV, and then was beaten down by Shayna Baszler to write her off TV so she could go film a movie, but she'd never return as she was released due to budget cuts in November. And this time, the Eva Marie WWE experiment was finally over. When Gable Steveson was signed to the WWE in 2021, his signing was likened to Kurt Angle due to the fact that he was an Olympic-level freestyle wrestler just like Kurt Angle, who also won a gold medal at the Olympics, again just like Kurt Angle. Gable Steveson was signed to the WWE 5 days after SummerSlam 2021, where he made an appearance on the show, and he was crossing over into professional wrestling from the freestyle wrestling world just like Kurt Angle did. He was drafted to the Raw brand in October of that same year, which indicated he must be making his debut and wrestling soon, right? Well, no, because after he was drafted to Raw, he was just hardly ever mentioned or acknowledged, and there was a whole lot of waiting, and waiting, and waiting for months upon months until he made his first official appearance for WWE at WrestleMania 38 in April 2022, being introduced by Stephanie McMahon on night 1, and then confronting and suplexing Chad Gable on night 2. So surely he has to be debuting soon now, right? Well, no, because once again, more waiting upon waiting as the days turned to months, turned to years, and it came out that WWE were unhappy with Gable Stevens' progress in training, as his next appearance wouldn't be until the end of the year in a segment with Kurt Angle. And then there was more waiting until in June of 2023 on the NXT Gold Rush episode, Gable Steveson would make a surprise appearance on the show, giving advice to Eddie Thorpe on how he can beat Damon Kemp. Damon Kemp, aka Gable Stevenson's real-life older brother, who despite being signed after him to the WWE, had already surpassed him in the company. And Gable Steveson would be quietly moved to the NXT brand despite him being drafted to Raw 2 years ago and making 0 appearances, and would start a feud with Baron Corbin, which would finally lead to Gable Stevenson's debut match, of course against Baron Corbin at the Great American Bash. And this match between the two of them was maybe the worst match of the year. He was just not the right opponent for Corbin at all, and that's thanks in part to the fact that Gable was getting booed and Corbin was being cheered, despite the fact that Gable was the face and Corbin was the heel. The match ended in a double countout after 6 minutes, and Gable Stevenson's not been seen on TV since, only now doing occasional dark matches. Gable Steveson is clearly showing no sign of improvement, and WWE does not rate him. And combine that with his horrible past, which probably should have prevented him from getting signed in the first place, and this goes down as one of the worst WWE signings ever. Guys, that's it from me, but sound off in the comments who you think is the worst WWE signing of all time. I'll see you all in the next one. Leave a like on this video, subscribe for more wrestling content, and goodbye, and keep on rolling.